Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode of my Immigrant Diary, the space where we unpack the journeys, the struggles, and the headlines that defines the immigrant experience. I'm your host, Precious, and with me is my brother, Wally. Wally, how have you been?
I'm good. I'm good. It's been a great week so far. Summer is fully here in Seattle now, although it's still raining a bit. But we are also looking for the World Cup. Seattle is also a host city for the World
Nice.
Cup. So although I couldn't get a ticket to go and see it, I would have loved to get a ticket to go and see the World Cup, a game, at least one game here in Seattle. But for whatever, I think the way when I signed up to try to get a ticket, it was by lottery that you get assigned a city or something like that. So anyway,
Yeah,
yeah,
Wally.
looking forward
Those
to it.
ticket prices are not friendly
Yeah,
because I look
crazy.
at the closest city, it's closest, not just the closest city, the closest city with the game that I might want to watch was in New Jersey, which is like 2.5 hour drive from Baltimore, maybe 3 hours max. But then on FIFA website, they still had some tickets. They were going for $700.
You're not VIP.
And I'm not going alone. I'm gonna have to go with at least my son. At least my son. So that's
My
we're looking at 1,500. Now there's gas, there's driving all the way
refreshments, yes, all those
there's
things.
their snacks bill. Then maybe
Oh
we'll
my,
spend the night in New Jersey because we're not just gonna probably go see them
exactly,
and drive back, especially if the game is
exactly.
in the evening. Why spend the night in New Jersey and have fun? So we're looking at it that weekend for just the both of us. I'm supposed to be estimating maybe two to $3,000 just because I want to go and see a game. I will see it on TV. Yeah, well that's a fact, but yeah, that's the reality. Our first topic today hits right at the heart of international students. So, if you're an international student, listen to this. ICE has uncovered a massive suspected fraud scheme involving thousands of foreign students utilizing the optional practical training program, OPT. Wally, this is scary.
Yes, it is. It is crazy that you have this crazy situation. I read into the article, and apparently, a lot of people. First of all, like people were using non-existing companies to apply for OPT, or they will use a fake address, basically an address that leads to nowhere. They will use residential address. So basically, I have a friend that's living next door. They will just use that address as a company that is hiring them. And it is crazy how desperate a lot of people are, and how far a lot of people do go through. And it's crazy to what length people go to be able to remain in the United States. This is something that, and if you're not familiar with the way OPT works, for those who are not in STEM, it's typically 1 year. You get an extra 1 year to get a job. And if you are in STEM, you get additional 2 years, which makes it a total of 3 years to be able to get a job. And if you just think about it a little bit, how it affects a lot of other students, it benefits the United States to have people that they've trained remain here to get a job. But if those people do not get a job and they start committing fraud, then the United States government have the right to start thinking, should we just scrap this program? Or just make it a lot more, make the requirement increase the requirement and make it a lot more difficult for people to be able to apply for this thing.
Yeah, Wally, well said. It's exactly as it says in the story. I'm going to read the one of the publication about this story. Listen to this. The U.S. Immigration and Custom Enforcement officers says investigators uncovered widespread irregularities involving nearly 10,000 foreign students participating in the federal government's optional practical training program, which is the OPT. Now, the authorities allege many students claimed employment with highly suspicious companies that may have been created to exploit the visa system, which we have talked about, Wally, in our, some of our
Yes.
videos. Now, according to the investigators, agents found empty office buildings, locked business locations, and residential home addresses, just like you mentioned, listed on jobs as job sites for hundreds of students, despite no evidence of active operations. Officers also reported multiple companies using the same addresses. This is not a common scam without leases, offshore HR contacts, and businesses tied to tax liens, civil lawsuits, and breach of contract claims as the investigation continues. So it's exactly as you just spelled out, Wally. Exactly as you spelled out. That's what's really happening. But just to see, we're talking about over 10,000 foreign students that have been that's been affected. Now, the issue is that it's not like this. So this investigation is saying it's not like the students were defrauded. The students are participating in the process of defrauding the US, the OPT program. That's the thing.
I really hope that this is something that the government can bring in integrity back to, because we do need integrity in the system to for it to be very efficient, especially for those who actually need it.
Oh yeah.
I really hope that they are able to solve. The other thing that he also reminded me of, also we covered a case of where a lot of applicants were using fake degrees to apply to schools in Canada. And that was like 14,000 students that they discovered at the time, and still counting. And this someone is also the same. They discovered 10,000 students that are over 10,000, and it's still counting. So we don't even know how bad it's going to get yet.
All right, Wally. Moving on from students to travel. If you're planning on a trip anytime soon, especially with the World Cup coming up, right? You need to hear this exclusive investigation from CTV News in Canada. We'll leave the link in the bio. There is a sophisticated luggage tag switching scheme happening at major airports, and it's ensnaring innocent travelers. Corrupt ground staff and baggage handlers at airports like Toronto Pearsons are reportedly taking the luggage tags off innocent everyday travelers and sticking them onto suitcases filled with heavy drugs bound for international destination. This is scary. Now, from the actual report, Wally, the way this is done is said that a worker will stick the luggage tag of unsuspected travelers and put it on another bag filled with drug. Hence, travelers need to always take a picture of their bags and the tag when it has been done at the airport before it's taken to the baggage handlers. Take a picture so that if they switch it, you have a picture, timestamp on your picture to show that the bags or the box with drug is not yours. Because there are people that have been ensnared, and it's so difficult for people to defend themselves in this situation. But there are people that have been ensnared and been arrested, especially in countries that carry severe penalties for drug trafficking. That's how sad this situation is. Wally.
Yes, it's definitely a scary situation. I can just imagine landing in a country and being put to the side and being questioned about my luggage. And they bring out the luggage with my name tag on it, and they ask me about the luggage. Obviously, if I say the luggage is not mine, I'm going to say this is not my luggage. And then they know that they already scanned it. They see that there are drugs inside. So how do I prove that it's not my luggage with my name tag on it? It's going to be extremely difficult. Maybe the best case scenario is to get some sort of CCTV recording from the departing airport, which will be also extremely difficult because you have to think about international communication. You are communicating across authorities, maybe through Interpol or something. Meanwhile, you are being detained in a jail somewhere in the world that you don't even know how your fate is going to turn out to be. And if you think about it, especially those countries with heavy penalty, like the death penalty, countries like Singapore, they've seen a lot of people try to lie their way out of carrying drugs. So their first instinct is not to believe you in that kind of situation. So there's even no way, no matter how much you argue, you are going to spend a lot of time in jail until you're able to prove yourself innocent. And it's going to be very, very difficult to do that. But if you're coming from the West, you might have some sort of leeway to be able to get proper evidence that that's not your document. But if you're coming from a country, from a developing country like Nigeria, it's going to be very challenging to get the support that you need to be able to get out of jail, especially if you don't have any connection in the government. You are just a random person that is just doing something.
That is true, Wally. It will be really difficult and this is everyday people just going about their lives that are affected by this scheme. And I can guarantee you it is destroying lives and destroying families. But here we are. Moving on. Earlier in the week, it was said allegedly, not just allegedly, in actual fact, it was said that if you are in the US on a temporary visa and are looking to transition to permanent residency, at that time, last week, the Trump administration put out a notice saying you have to go back and apply through the consular processing program or system. You and I know that it takes forever in most countries to process to go apply for consular processing. Nevertheless, this week the news also broke that it is not in the entirety of the situation. So there are loopholes and there are consideration when people are here legally, who are married to US citizens, who have who meet certain requirements. And so it is now looking like there's a shift in the position of the government to require those switching from temporary visa to permanent residency
Yeah.
to return. So this is good news from the initial scare from last week. So we want to bring that to you and just to keep you updated.
Yes, initially when I heard the news, I was wondering how they were going to go about implementing it, because I also went to check USI's website. There was still a web page that is describing adjustments of status, how the process you have to go through to get it. But the US Trump administration had already announced that they wanted to stop processing application for green card for everyone that is applying. So it was really interesting to see. Of course, it wasn't an encouraging news for those who are, especially for immigrants from different parts of the world. But it's one of those things that I do see with the Trump administration, that they do something that they saw that like it is going to be against the Constitution from what they want to implement. That's why they changed their mind and said it's not going to apply to everyone. But still, it is still something that is positive that you can look at the administration said that they made a policy and it wasn't in the best interest of the United States as a whole. And now they're shifting to make it to sort of return to what it used to be. So hopefully this is encouraging this is encouraging news for those that are trying to apply for a green card in the United States.
Yeah, Wale, that's well said, because I just find it very interesting that this administration, it would sometimes just implement, certain policies. There's been a lot of ambiguity about to what extent does this, how does this policy change or affect things? To be announced, then it's as if after it's been announced, that's when the entire body of the policy is being worked on. That's the way it seems. Like after it's been said, then the question is, how do you implement it? Are you going to go around arresting people who are applying for who are applying for adjustment of status? Are you going to take a US citizen spouse away from them because you are saying your spouse has to go back to their country to apply? Are you going to separate? It's why families that have kids, you're going to separate the family because they have to leave the country to apply. So there's just a lot of, and it just seemed like it wasn't properly, reviewed before the announcement, was made. And here we are. So, but the good thing is that, it's come and gone. For lack of other words, it's come and gone.
Yeah.
We are where we are. We're still where we are. So, which is good. But let's ingest some, hopeful and positive news. While this green card adjustment of status policy was moving us left and right and not giving us somewhere to land, the H-1B lottery data for 2026 is out. And it actually brings a huge relief for a lot of people who are in tech and also professionals in the US. It states 2026 H-1B lottery saw significantly higher approval rates. Hold on. Because there was a massive drop in duplicate and fraudulent application. If you remember the first story we mentioned, we talked about how people have been defrauding the OPT program, which is the same way people defraud the H-1B program. And so
Yes, yeah.
with all of the changes that the government have put in place, it has reduced duplicates, because sometimes people had multiple applications, using multiple companies, using shell companies, using all kinds of scheme to increase their chance of getting approved. But now with that reduction, this data shows an increase in approval. So there are two ways to look at it, right? There's does that mean less people are applying, so therefore more people are getting it? So what happens to the others? However you understand it, the reality is that there is light for a lot of people in this category. Wale, what do you think?
Well, the biggest takeaway for me is that like a lot of the fraudulent applications have been filtered out. So that encourages the system. That means that if I'm just going to throw out a number. Let's say there were 100,000 people that applied last year. This time around, there were 80 or 70 or 80,000 people that applied. I think the limit is about 60 or something, or 60 or 80. I don't remember the number. So once that those number of people applied, now they can use the lottery to now select the amount of people that were that will move forward with the H-1B application process. So that's kind of like how the numbers work. But also, it was also reported that most people that were approved were also people that studied in the US. So this is something that's encouraging for students. We have just talk about the OPT fraud, which is discouraging. So in this side, we have a lot of people that study, especially when students move to the United States, they come to for advanced degrees like masters or doctorates. So for those who actually had the advanced degrees, most of the, I think they said about half of the approved were those who actually studied in the US, whether it's masters, doctorates, or even BSc. So that's something that is very encouraging. I know I met a couple of students personally. They were very concerned last year about how this whole process has been. They've not been able to get an H-1B approved, and they're not really sure about their future in the United States. So now to see this result is definitely very encouraging.
Yeah, well, it's very encouraging, and it kind of just opens a level playing field for those who deserve to be in
Yes.
that bucket, and makes it fair. And when it's fair, the best of the best are usually picked, and they benefit from it. And so that's the beauty of this clean out, and we support that because it is the best for the American citizen and the best for students who deserve it. To wrap up, let's look at two major global headlines. On the national security front, President Trump announced recently that the US forces have successfully taken out what he described as the most active terrorist group in the world, marking a major shift in counterterrorism milestone. Now, this happened in Nigeria, where we're from, our beloved country, where in some parts around the northern Nigeria, we've had some ISIS takeover in certain locales, and they've kind of just been expanding their reach lately. And with the help of in collaboration with the Nigerian government, the US, were able to perform some airstrike, and they took out some of the groups and their leaders. And honestly, that is so welcome.
Yes, this is like you said, it's definitely good news. For people that are not familiar, the group that's associated with ISIS in Nigeria, they identify themselves as Boko Haram, and they've been operating in Nigeria for a very long time now, committing all kinds of atrocities, attacking villages without respecting the lives of humans. They just commit their atrocities in a wicked way. That's the best way I can describe it. They believe they are doing it for religious purposes, but for as far as I'm concerned, it's a wicked act. So, and a lot of people in the northern part of northeastern part, especially of Nigeria, and also other surrounding countries like Chad, Niger, they've been suffering from this same group of people. So I'm glad that the United States were able to target, especially the leader of this group. A lot of people have been speculating about how do they get weapons, how do they continue to get resources, like even the food. How do they get all those things if not for the support of some certain groups that are beyond the countries that are located there? And, in this case, it's ISIS. So for me, this is something that we hope will continue to happen. This collaboration will continue to happen. And so that if it's also in the best interest of the United States to take out ISIS terrorists around the world.
Absolutely, Wale, it is, because if you remember the history behind 9/11, it was assumed that over the years, our terrorists have grown enough to be emboldened enough to attack the US. So the US have to
Yes.
always try to prevent any such emboldenment or growth in terrorism across the world. So
Yes.
it's a very welcome initiative or action. And on a much lighter note, the US government has dropped the controversial $15,000 visa deposit requirement for foreign fans who hold confirmed World Cup tickets. Honestly, Wale, this is a very good news. Very apt, but very good. I know that it was a major bone of contention. I think several months ago, or over a year ago, when the U.S. government, brought this initiative of requiring certain countries' citizens to deposit $15,000 as more like guarantee that you're going to return after the World Cup or ticket or after your visit. So apparently, they made a U-turn just a couple of months back, a couple of weeks back actually, because the inflow for World Cup, according to some of the reports, allegedly is not as expected. So the US is, the government had to reconsider and say, hey, this is a global event. You need people to be able to come to the country to partake. And that was so there's so many benefits to that. It's economical benefit, it's just social benefit and the like.
Yes, I think the only thing is I just hope it's not too late, this kind of turnaround, because this is, I think they made the decision in May and this is June already. And we are a few weeks away from the World Cup. And if you think about how people travel, especially when you want to travel long distances from either you're traveling from Africa or from Asia, it takes several months, sometimes even years, a couple of years to plan for your travel, for your trip to the United States. You have to reallocate your resources. The money you are supposed to spend somewhere else, you will not want to dedicate it to a trip for the United States. I would love for the World Cup to succeed. I would love to be able to see fans from different parts of the world to come support their team. That's my only concern. I hope it's not too late. Seattle is the whole city. I'm looking forward to be able to meet a lot more people.
All right, Wale. And thank you for staying, with us and watching our channel. Please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And stay tuned for the next episode.
Yes, thank you. We'll see you in the next one.